Hi, I'm Dr. Mollie Marti. On our next show, we'll be visiting with Linda Langston, County Supervisor and President of the National Association for Counties, about her initiative, Ready and Resilient Counties. She'll be sharing specific tips to prepare yourself and your loved ones for when disaster strikes. We'll also be talking about ways to grow your resiliency. Tune in to Resiliency Matters on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader. I'm Dr. Mollie Marti, and welcome to Resiliency Matters. This is where we take the big resiliency research and best practices and break it down into small, bite-sized pieces that you can begin using immediately to strengthen yourself and others. What if you could learn the 3 most important pieces to being prepared for disaster? Would you spend the next 28 minutes with us? What if in the next 10 minutes you could learn the most important piece to build resilience and what you can start doing today to strengthen it? Would you hang out with us? Who is us? My other half of us today is Linda Langston. Linda is a county supervisor for Linn County, Iowa. She also is sitting president of the National Association of Counties, NACO. NACO covers counties across the United States, and as president, Linda gets to pick an initiative to focus on, and her initiative this year is Ready and Resilient Counties. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Dr. Marti. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Well, I know we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. You had a leadership position during the great floods of 2008, as they're known here. For those not familiar with the floods, tell us a bit about what happened.
Well, there were 83 of the 99 counties in Iowa that were impacted, some by tornadoes, but some by floods. So in my home county, Cedar Rapids, Linn County, Iowa, we had a very significant flood, the worst we've ever had in recorded history. 10 square miles of the community were engulfed in water. We had to evacuate a hospital, a jail, lots of roads closed, 25,000 people evacuated. So it was really a big deal, and I happened to be chair of the board that year.
Well, lucky you, lucky us.
Me, yes.
So how did this experience shape your view of resiliency?
I think what I really came to understand was it is important to think ahead. It is important to plan. And it's also very important to have relationships that help you in recovery.
And I think we're going to be talking a lot about relationships today, and I love that segue because I mentioned to you, I printed this out, and you're familiar with this study, but it's a study I want to share with our viewers. There was a poll done recently of 3,000 people in New York and New Jersey affected by Superstorm Sandy. And the poll explored the resilience of people and neighborhoods directly impacted by Sandy. The most important sources of help before, during, and after the storm were friends, family, and neighbors. Friends, family, and neighbors, those relationships that we're going to be talking about today. About 1/3 said that they reached out to friends, family, and neighbors for assistance in the aftermath of the storm, rising to 47%, nearly half of the people surveyed in the extremely affected areas. The level of trust, something else we're going to talk about today, in a neighborhood is an important signal of resilience and rebuilding. Neighborhoods lacking in social cohesion and trust reported having a more difficult time recovering. Individuals in the slowly recovering neighborhoods, and I want to give you a few statistics, they were less likely to believe that people can be trusted, 31 to 44%, or that the storm brought out the best in people, 68 to 53%. So there's a lot of distrust and in their neighbor and in people in general. Individuals in slowly recovering neighborhoods also are more likely to report greater levels of hoarding food and water, 47 to 25%, looting and stealing, 31 to 7%, and vandalism, 21 to 5% in their neighborhoods during or immediately after the storm. The encouraging news, there is good news, is that overall the storm brought out the best in neighbors, with reports of people sharing access to power, food, and water, and providing shelter. Just 7% reported that the storm brought out the worst in their neighbors. I think this is such interesting evidence about those relationships that you mentioned, about the connections between families and neighbors and communities. What comment do you have on that study?
That would be very reflective of my experience in our own community here. I think for the most part, that's where people do turn. They look to trusted people. And I believe that Cedar Rapids' recovery from the flood has been facilitated by the fact that we do have strong neighborhoods, that we do have people that we can trust in. And I think that in crisis really brings out the human desire to do something good beyond themselves. And we saw that over and over again. I think people really are hardwired to want to help, to do something good. A lot of it is giving people the opportunity to follow through on what their heart tells them they should do.
And that is such a wonderful mirror to the work of the Community Resiliency Project, and I know you're a bit familiar with that, but that's exactly our message in supporting these youth, is that they are designed to contribute and serve, and as they have opportunities to do that, they not only strengthen our community, but they strengthen themselves. So you're seeing this as a universal human need.
I do. I mean, that's the way I come to the world. So anything I can do to facilitate that in people, I oftentimes think it really is just giving folks the opportunity.
Yeah, okay. And so to give us a better sense of your position as the president of the National Association of Counties, how many counties are there? What is the work of our counties?
Well, it's a big thing because there's over 3,000 counties nationwide. We do a lot of the health, transit, roads, emergency management. Those are all key. I think the other part is that my goal is to make sure that counties across the nation have the particular tools that are going to assist them in being prepared, in thinking ahead of time. Sadly, government is often reactive. This requires being proactive, and we are in those places that really allow us to help people. So post-disaster, that's counties really at work. So I want to be sure that people are thinking about it and that they have real tools that they can use to help their communities.
So it's more human nature to be reactive than to be proactive, the downside of human nature coming out. So in short, what is your goal with ready and resilient communities?
Well, I think talking about how people can really assess their community so that they can have the tools to understand what might be the areas that they need to improve in, what can they do to prepare more. Are people, do they understand what the plan is in their community? Are they doing their emergency drills? Really prodding people to take to their best efforts.
And we're going to talk more about being proactive in that way. So tool number one, family, neighborhood, and community relationships are vital pieces of resilience. Prioritize investing in and nurturing relationships. When we come back, we will be talking more about being proactive and the key steps you can take to be prepared in the face of disaster.
Take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see some change.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people, connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
What if you bought something and then discovered you'd been shortchanged? Consider this. For the second year, the FCC reports that Mediacom delivered over 100% of their advertised 15 meg speed, while DSL didn't. Slower speeds mean buffering videos, slower gaming, longer downloads, frustrating timeouts. It's clear why more people are dropping DSL and switching to Mediacom. Call today and get speeds proven to deliver.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Dr. Mollie Marti, and welcome back to Resiliency Matters. Today we are visiting with Linda Langston, President of the National Association of Counties, as well as a supervisor for our own county here in Iowa. We were talking about helping humans, constituents, people, and this applies to the youth we work with as well, overcome that delay or that lack of urgency. And I found a really interesting pairing between that post-vention crisis response and the proactive resiliency building. You know our background with the Community Resiliency Project. Right. We lost 3 young people to suicide, and so of course we just dove right in to try to strengthen our youth and strengthen our community. At the same time, we've always had this goal and a focus on building stronger youth and community. What is your experience with those two things, that reactive and that preventative? Any guidance on that?
Well, I think that actually resiliency is and planning really are a very circular process. So literally the minute some kind of crisis or disaster happens, you start reviewing what just happened and planning for the next one. And that is just life. And that's one thing we know about disasters. They're happening more frequently. They're coming with more expense. And so you really need to be anticipating and planning ahead. And that's really true in any crisis. You can't assume that it will not happen. You actually have to make the assumption that it will.
And even in Cedar Rapids, didn't they have a 100-year flood and then a 500-year flood? Is that?
Well, I have often said that if I use those numbers, I would be about 3,000 years old, and so I know I'm not. So I think that's the anticipatory. You have to understand that there is some change going on, and what can you do to be prepared? So that really requires people as well as governments to really think about what can they do to anticipate. So those are all critical in our functioning, that we really do need to take time in our busy lives to anticipate what do we need to do, and then we as government officials need to think about what do we need to do to help the community be prepared.
Mm-hmm. And the same is for leaders on so many levels. I'd really like to challenge our viewers today to be thinking, how does this apply in my home? How does this apply in my child's school or as a teacher in my classroom? How does it apply in our community? And we'll continue to connect those dots, but our viewers might need to be thinking, oh, they're talking government, but that really applies right here in my home. What do I need to do with my family?
And I also think both family and in government, you can challenge your city officials or your county officials and ask them, what are you doing to help us be prepared? Many people may not know, but particularly because we have a nuclear power plant in our community, we're required by federal law to drill 4 times a year. So are people doing this wherever you live in Iowa? Are your elected officials going to a drill? Sometimes it tends to get farmed out, which I understand because people are busy, to a fire chief, to a police chief. But it's really important that the mayor and the city council and the county supervisors go to those, because each crisis and disaster is different. And you have to be prepared no matter what it is. So a few years back, we had an issue with flu. Iowa has issues with measles outbreaks. That's going to look very different than a flood or a tornado. And that really takes time of being in a room with all the colleagues that will be there. Schools are there, hospitals are there, and that's part of the relationship building as well. When you're sitting in a room and you're planning, you get to know people. So then when the crisis is there, you're actually talking to people you know. You're not coming out there and then being surprised by how many people are involved.
And my familiarity, again, is with the school, and so we've created a crisis intervention protocol that wasn't in place for Iowa schools to be using, so that when, whether it's a suicide attempt or another crisis, they know who does what are the next steps, and to get those done on paper, and then to be educating staff about what that looks like. And I think it really is important to our viewers to have a challenge here of advocacy, that it's good to go to your schools and say, what are you doing to be planning, to be drilling, and to our county officials, to our cities, to all of those officials, to be asking those tough questions, because it makes a difference. It saves lives.
It really does. And the old adage we all heard when we were growing up, practice makes perfect, it really is true. So if you practice that, because oftentimes that's the challenge of a crisis. You're so overwhelmed. It is the practice that helps you get it right at that moment.
Exactly. So we keep coming back to relationships. I knew that we would, but it is, I saw how the police officers worked with the school leaders and the business leaders, and so I've seen this at a microcosm. What's a practical tip that you can give about investing in and nurturing those relationships? A
lot of it is about building the relationships before the crisis happens, because as I've often told people, you do not want to be in a crisis situation and having to get to know someone that you're going to ask for help. If you need help, and the whole, as you noted, the research is about trusting relationships. It's important to have those relationships built ahead of time, to know them, and to trust the people enough that you can call on them and say, I need your help in this. And so that is really a significant thing, and that takes time.
It takes time, and I think it really takes a mindset of investing, of giving, of not starting out saying, what do I want or what do I need from this relationship, but how do I invest in this?
Right, and so how do I come to the table and understand, what do I do in different situations? Who can I call on? So again and again, the practice, the drill, the calling people up, making sure you know who you can reach out to. And that's true for individuals as well as for government officials. You want to know, who do I call? Who do I call when this happens? So there might be people at the federal level that you're going to call. You may be calling congressional leaders. But also, if you're in a family situation, you want to know, who do I reach out to?
And we're going to dig into the nitty-gritty of those types